So, brethren, how many, by a show of hands, how many have found yourself ever trying to avoid pain? Trying to avoid pain in some way? Okay, a lot of people, good. If you didn't raise your hand, or if you're at home and you're sitting next to someone and you're like, how interactive should we be? And you didn't raise your hand because... If you didn't raise your hand because you're sure that you don't do it, I would submit that you even do it subconsciously. Think back to the time that maybe you've had to do some homework, a big project, or maybe your taxes, and you sat down at your desk, and you know it's going to be a couple hours, and maybe an hour and a half into it, you realize the past 45 minutes you've been rearranging and organizing your desk. Has that happened to you? Has that happened to you? And then you realize, well, how did I get here? Well, your brain is kind of sabotaging you, saying, do this thing that's a little less painful than this big project that's obviously more important. And you do that as well oftentimes in the morning. How many people have hit the alarm and hit snooze more times because your subconscious is telling you in 16 minutes, even though it takes 20 usually, if there's no traffic, you get the first spot and the elevator's already open. Your brain's telling you this, even though it's not likely, you may believe it because it's trying to sabotage you to give yourself an out so you can avoid pain. And now we find that we are always trying to avoid it, but it isn't that scary if you think about what it is in reality. All pain is a simple signal, a signal that's telling your body that you're uncomfortable. Maybe it's an emotional or however, or it's physical. It's just saying, hey, you got to do something about this uncomfort I'm feeling. And if you only write down one thing today, I hope you write down this part of the notes. Well, I hope you write down everything that Mr. Ashley says. But if you only write one thing from my message, I would say write this down. That pain is a signal, and it's telling you to do two things. Either change your actions or change your attitude. Change your actions or change your attitude. And to give you an example of how this might be physically, I want to give you an example of me just a few years ago. My wife has a family that are a cast iron skillet cooking family. Now, I had, ever since Teflon came out, my family discovered the magic of it and how nothing sticks to it and how wonderful it is. And so that's apparently a bigger difference than I had had. And then I had biscuits and gravy in not Teflon, in one of these cast iron skillets. And I realized that breakfast is 10 times more delicious in the cast iron. And so I was going to cook some eggs just like Mama McKinney does. Oh, and they're so good. And so I was going to cook some eggs. Now, this is not me. I thought it'd be kind of vain to be in my own reenactment. So I had a very inexpensive actor help me out. So as I was saying, I love eggs. Well, this is too much. Okay, so I loved eggs, and I was going to cook some for my wife. So I asked my wife, sweetie, do you want some eggs too? She said yes. And so I started cooking. And that skillet got to sizzling, and the butter was smelling good, and I was cracking the eggs and feeling like a pro. I was going to make them just like my mother-in-law. And I got to about to where they're finished, and I was like, sweetie, you ready for your eggs? And she said, yeah. And so I reached to grab the handle to bring it over to the side here. Some of you already know, you've learned this lesson, that it is not like a Teflon. In fact, at that point, once I actually grabbed the handle, I realized that I could have cooked the eggs on that handle because the center of the cast iron skillet is the exact same temperature of the handle once it's been cooking for a while. And a signal hit my brain at that point. Hit my brain and told me that I had to do the two things that I had told you about earlier. I had to make a choice. I had to change my attitude about how this was feeling and what this was doing to my skin, or I had to change my actions. And so I did, indeed, change my actions. After yelling in a very, very low, strong, manly tone, I let go of that hot thing that was telling me to let go. It gave me, it still was burning me afterwards. Even after I let go, I was still feeling that pain. And this is a lot of times what we find, to divert it to maybe a more ethereal, maybe more like a relationship. I had to know, like, that was not good in that relationship. It was causing me pain. I could have had that relationship gone like that and left it there. I could have just hated my favorite sort of cooking breakfast, cast iron skillet. I could have hated the thing that makes me the most delicious breakfast. But what I did instead was change how I thought about it, change how I interacted with it. I changed my actions, and now me and that cast iron skillet have a good relationship. I don't know if you can see it very well, but I have a mitten that I use to hold the handle if ever I need to use it. And in turn, it doesn't hurt me. And we have a good breakfast-making relationship together. So that is how I would love for you to feel about pain. Not to fear it, not to worry about it, not to spiral in misery when you think about a past pain or a future could-be pain. I want you to think of it as it's simply as it is, which is a signal. A signal that's asking you whether you need to change your actions or need to change your attitude. So let's tackle the first one first off, your actions. So a lot of times you need to do something right away, like I said, in a relationship. Change maybe how you're saying something to someone. If you find that they're speaking a harsh word to you or you find there's trouble in your relationship, you can a lot of times change how you interact with them. I think of the example of Pharaoh in the Bible. He again and again was getting pain from these plagues that happened time and time again. And if we ignore this signal of pain, we can be just like Pharaoh, getting in pain and pain and pain again and again until we realize, wait a minute, I need to change what I'm doing. In Pharaoh's case, he needed to stop saying no. He needed to say, yes, you can go free. And after he did that, he stopped having plagues. He made poor decisions after that, but at least he stopped having plagues at that point. Pain can be a great signal for us to change our actions when it comes to how we deal with others, and maybe we might need to apologize to someone. That pain can give us a really good signal that we need to repair something about our relationship. Or that guilt, maybe of a sin or something we've done wrong, that guilt, if we let that do its work, it can help us change our attitude and change where we're at and move towards repentance. And those are the ways that you can change your actions. So pain is a really great way to, if you can leverage it to move yourself into a better action, you'll be better on the other side of it. Now, attitude is another time, is another thing that pain could be signaling. When sometimes you can't change your actions, you're kind of stuck in a situation. There's this book that's called Love Everything That Happens by Ryan Holiday. And he gives the example of like a camping trip where everything goes wrong. What happens at the end of the camping trip? Where everything goes wrong, you joke about it, right? You laugh about it with your friends afterwards. In fact, the more that goes wrong, you just laugh even more. And his theory is, and what he suggests you do, is that why wait till the trip's over? Why wait till 6 years has passed? Why not, in the middle of this, in the middle of trouble, because you know you're going to laugh anyway, why not laugh now? He also gives examples of athletes that know where they're going. They know what this pain is going to give them. He gives the example of heavyweight champion Jack Jeffries that is fighting in the fight of his life. To be the champion, he has to take out this other guy who's come out of retirement that everyone wants to win. He has to fight against not only his opponent, but a stadium. Think the Super Bowl of 1900s, the early 1900s. It was the biggest event, so big that they didn't have a place for it. They had to build something for this big event. All the people there were against him. But Jack Jeffries, I think it's maybe Jack Johnson. I think he was fighting. There's two Jacks in that fight. But it's Jack Johnson. And everyone was against him, but he still had a smile in that fight. He was smiling because he knew each blow made his opponent more weak. Each blow made his opponent more wild, more tired. And each blow got his opponent to where he wanted to get him at, where he could win the fight. And he indeed did win the fight and became world championship. And just like a mountain climber or a runner, they can see that goal that they're trying to get to. If you'll turn to James 1, verse 2. Well, see, if you have a clear enough goal that you can get yourself into a better attitude with it, if you know where you're going, if you think about the mountain climber whose knuckles are bloody, who's high above the ground, whose heart's beating fast, and he's looking down, he's definitely feeling the adrenaline, and his muscles are sore, he's tired, his body wants to give up, but he's having a blast. He's having the best time of his life up there. You think of maybe a runner who's reached that 20-mile mark where they get the runner's high, as it's called. His body, instead of telling it to quit, his body's saying, keep going, this is great. It's James 1 verse 2 that says, count it all joy when you fall into trials. And these people have seen these athletes, and probably you, if you've ever worked out and you've just started a routine, you kind of don't like it at first, but your body gets to a point where it's like, yeah, I need that. I need to do this routine. And it starts to change how it physically feels inside of you. It changes the pain of that trial that you're going through to joy because it feels good. And it all starts with knowing where you're going. There's also times, if you'll turn to Romans 8:28, there's also times in life when we're going through something that we're not putting on ourselves for our own good necessarily. It's not something that maybe even God's putting on us for our own good necessarily. But what we learn from Joseph is that God can take something terrible as being thrown into slavery by your brothers and then later being thrown into jail, as he can take those terrible things that others meant for evil and he can make those for good. He can take that terrible situation and put you in the position to where you can be able to help thousands in the case of Joseph and save his family and many others in the whole nation of Egypt. In Romans 8:28, it says, Romans 8:28 says that all things work for the good of those who love God. And if we trust that, if we trust that God can do the same thing that he's saying in this verse, that the same thing he's done for Joseph, that whatever our trial is that we're currently going through, that he will work out for better. And now there's times that he will work it out in the case of Joseph in this life for better. It could be that he works it out to where you'll find a new opportunity or an amazing lesson that you've learned through this. But in the case of many, it won't be a good ending in this life. You won't get the relief from the pain. We look at Christ's example, where he fervently prayed, so fervent that he sweat blood. And he prayed that God take this cup from him. He did not want to go through that pain of being crucified. And God did not take that pain from him. He, in turn, had to go through that terrible, terrible event, that terrible pain of being crucified. And the solace that he had was indescribable opportunity in words, that he was going to be again with his family. In fact, in his death, in his pain, he was creating a bigger family. He was giving the opportunity for us to be a part of his family. And now he, in his pain, was able to take that attitude and change that attitude, even in the worst, and say, forgive them, for they know not what they do. In his terrible pain, he was able to do that. And I know that all of us, there's a point in which we will get to a point where we won't escape a pain, whether it be emotional, a loss of someone we love, or the pain of our own physical life. At the end of our physical life, we'll have pain, and we will oftentimes just not escape it. And there's some of you here that know that you have a pain, maybe a big loss that you won't be able to escape. But I pray that you're able to see and be comforted by the example of Jesus Christ. And know that he is with you right now, in your pain right now. And that he's able to, and that maybe you'll be able to be comforted by the same thing that comforted him, the indescribable, amazing opportunity, that big future. That's way more than reaching the top of a mountain or ending a long physical race. It's the opportunity to be a part of the great God family that we will be being able to be a part of. And to speak to that amazing future that we get to look forward to when we're out of this life and get the reward of the next one. We looked at Revelation 21, verse 4, where God promises that there will be no more death, no more mourning, or no more crying, or no more pain. This beautiful future that we all have to look forward to. So let's look at pain, if you would, and next time you have something that's painful, look to it not as something to be feared or something to spiral and worry about, but look at it as a signal. And then ask yourself, do I need to change my actions or do I need to change my attitude?